Okay. Ugh, I'm so tired. All right. So now we are on part two of Can Gynarchy Come from Democracy? Uh, Aside from, let's like, we've talked about the institution and some of its flaws and its problems. I would say that, and this is kind of a bit of a deeper problem. I don't think I think that I think democracy by its nature engenders conflict and creates division. And that's because it was initially resolved to unify people against an external force. And so when we see it within that context, when we pay attention to it through that way, in that way, what we realize is that can conflict, a system that's based on conflict, that evolves itself in whatever ways that it does through conflict, is that compatible with the belief systems of people who desire cooperation? And I mean cooperation that does not require two or three people to kill five or six or seven or whatever. And my answer would be no, it doesn't. I don't think that, at least not as it's currently understood. I don't think that you can, if you set up a system in such a way to where you have majority minority kind of relationship, ultimately what you are essentially ushering in is rule by the majority. And the question is that majority, does it even have the right to rule? Does the minority have the right to rule? And at the end of the day, I think it just depends on your perspective. And if you feel like, I think it's really a case of how many people can you alienate from the system and how many people can be trodden on by a system before that system's very existence comes into jeopardy, where it's going to be killed by the people. They've had enough. They are done with it. I mean, for instance, one thing that we're seeing in the present day is that it seems like no matter which politician we elect, economic life is still difficult for so many of us. I mean, so many people say that they don't want to have kids because they can't afford them. So Democrats aren't doing really anything to stop that. Republicans obviously are not doing anything to fucking stop that. So if the system itself becomes compromised by a minority group with authority that transcends the political realm. In other words, if you have money getting into governments, if you have individuals who are able to co-opt a group in their favor, then you no longer have an actual representative public. You have what we would call the guise of a representative public, the guise of democracy, where you think it is a democracy, but in reality, the people who you are voting for don't answer to you. They answer to the interests of the people who pay their bills, who pay for them to have their sponsor, who pay for them to be sponsored so that they have a chance to win elections. Um, and that right there is another reason why I don't think we can have these kinds of things happening. Also, sorry, not happening, why we can't have a gynarchy. Because gynarchy is ruled by women, not ruled by an elite, a group of people who stand on top, who stand above everybody else. That inherent difference always leads to bad results in history, one way or another. So, in other words, what I'm saying is if you have a group of 20 or 30 people who are really calling the shots and billions or millions don't have any actual power but think they do, again, you're just wasting your time participating in that. Um, Also, that's why I advocate for community, because you will feel the influence that you have on the people around you. Like when I talk to people like George, or I talk to people in my community, they're listening to me. I'm listening to them. I'm reading their comments. We are connecting. We're exchanging ideas. This is a lot more than how many of you actually get to have a direct conversation with your elected officials? How many individuals can feasibly do that? So we know that that's a problem. Uh, so that's kind of why I keep it at the community level. It has to stay there, in my opinion. The next thing on why I feel that um, Gynarchy can never really come from democracy is because democracy, in and of itself, always falls to male authoritarian despotism, right? So, in order for this to work, in order for people to get from point A to point B, at least in the sense of giving women a chance to run things, what you would first have to do is you would have to have a system that would never fall under male authoritarian rule. And we have never seen a democratic institution that was not compromised by the males within that society. We saw it with Nazi Germany. We've seen it with plenty of others. If you just go through the list, you look through your history, it happens again and again and again and again and again and again. And that makes me, and I would think it would make other people reticent about wanting to use this particular institution as the means by which to spread Gynarchy, or by the means by which to obtain a Gynarchy. And that's because if I'm doing all this work and then a bunch of violent people come and kill me and my friends and my family so that they can continue to hang on to power, well, my ideas could be burned, everything could be buried, be forgotten to time. Is like, well, what's the point of putting all this effort in if these individuals are just going to say, well, you know what, I'm gonna claim the election is rigged, even if it isn't, even if there's no evidence of it. If I'm gonna claim it's rigged, fuck you, and they initiate a fight. Well, this particular group has a tendency to be overrepresented in the military, in police, among security officers, among the population that regularly practices and uses guns, among the people who study war tactics and strategies, who read things like Sun Tzu, who read from people like Sun Tzu and who know how to properly strategize, who understand the importance of tactical thinking in physical engagements. Yeah, this is the group that we're going to be able to prevail against. I mean, it's not going to happen. So trying to go after it institutionally doesn't seem to work. I mean, obviously George has pointed out that, and it's a very correct point, that men are not going to vote themselves out of power. But the real problem isn't just that they won't vote themselves out of power. It's that they eventually undermine their own institutions that they purport to support. You know, we hear about these men saying, "Oh yeah, we love democracy." Like, it's like the Palpatine thing. It's like, I love democracy. And then what do? Oh, you cheated. Well, just even saying that somebody else cheated, just even claiming that somebody else rigged an election, that in and of itself undermines the entire political process. Because if you're calling into question whether or not votes are being counted, or if there's something wrong with the voting process, and that ends up being, and that those concerns end up being fueled more by paranoia, fear, and imagination than based on data, then you don't have a democracy anymore. Because a democracy is an agreement essentially between two people who would otherwise be killing each other, that they should resolve their disagreements in a consensual, safe manner. But if they're coming along and saying, oh yeah, fuck you, I just want power and control, and I'm going to try to make it seem like you're the one that's trying to take shit away from me when it's actually me trying to take things away from you. Just the very act of doing that, because there's always going to be loyalists, there's always going to be people jumping on the bandwagon for whatever their reasons are. Maybe they genuinely believe that they're being robbed. But even if they're not, it doesn't matter what the opinions are. What matters is the damage that they can do to the institution itself. And if you've got a bunch of people who are trying to be like a Gynarchist being trying to represent into the community, and then we end up being used as nightmare fuel that feeds the paranoia, the hatred, and the fear of their group, then all of a sudden, not only have we lost all our progress, but then they have again proven and shown to the world that no, they don't want democracy, that they don't want a representative republic when it no longer suits them. And actually, if you pay attention to the way the United States and other nations, if you pay attention to the way that nations treat other nations versus how a nation will treat itself, you also see this kind of thing happening, where if it suits a nation's purposes, they may try to topple another nation's government if the existing government is not doing things that are within their interest. In other words, okay, that country doesn't want to do business with my country, so I need to get rid of that regime so that I can do business there, or whatever. Whatever their reasoning is, that's a problem. Because if you can rationalize destroying other people's democracies, then how much of a step is it before you start? How much of it, like, how far away are you from rationalizing throwing your own democracy away when you no longer feel that it's going to get you what you want? So that's kind of like the danger. And this is where I kind of look at both parties, and I have a bit of contempt. It's not a bit, a lot of contempt, because I know one party has been doing this, but another party just lets them get the fuck away with it over and over again. Like, they let them do this shit. And then they wonder why the rest of the world's like, yeah, we don't fucking believe you. Why? Because why would you want to vote for somebody if they're basically telling you that if things don't go their way long enough, that they're just going to take it all away? So if they're not even willing to honor their social agreement, while I am continuing to honor my social agreement by not killing this guy, by letting him have his voice, but if he at some point down the line is going to stop honoring the social agreement and destroy everything that I've ever worked for, why the fuck should I be trying to use democracy, or whatever you want to call it? Why should I be using any of these institutions to try to advocate for my own political philosophy and ideas if they've already shown themselves not only hostile to their opposition, but to the very institutions that they purport to want to protect, that they say they want to protect, that they want to spread to the world, when in fact they don't. And we've seen that in more recent years. They've exposed it. They've shown that if it's not suiting their purposes, that they're just going to toss it out the window, because it's about power and control. It's not about principles or values. And if it was, then they wouldn't be doing this stupid fuck shit. But they are. So, from my point of view, no way. Because I have first, in order to have faith that an institution can lead us to the promised land, or whatever it is that you want, you first have to believe that the people participating in an institution are going to continue to honor the social construct. And if they do not honor that, then there is no reason to expend energy, because it's wasted on it. It's wasted on the system. It's wasted on everything else. I am not going to devote half my life to busting my ass for something, only for a bunch of people with guns to decide that they don't want to play they don't want to play by the rules anymore, and that they want to actually rewrite the entire food chain through violence and destruction. No fucking way. And I mean, some of this does come across like it's hostile for me, because it is. I am inherently aggressive to the idea of this, because I don't like having my time wasted. I don't like being told, well, if you just vote this, and this, it's going to happen. I'm like, no, what's going to happen is that party is going to gain control. Maybe they'll kill me. Maybe they'll kill a bunch of us. Maybe they'll kill all of us. But I am under no illusions that if that party feels like I'm a big enough threat, or that people who think like me are a big enough threat, that my vote is not going to matter to that person. Your vote is not going to matter to that person. What's going to matter is whether they think that I'm in a position of vulnerability enough that they can exploit it, that they can take advantage of it, that they can continue to ask me to participate while they themselves are no longer participating